the next 6 months, do they feel heavy to you? And have you asked yourself the question, is this the end? Because there's that looming sense of heaviness. Let's just name it. Let's just get brave and courageous and allow ourselves to acknowledge that there is a dread or something hanging very heavy over the timeline right now. You don't know necessarily where it's coming from. Is this another war? Is it a famine? Is it a disease? Is it something that is going to wound humanity? Well, there were multiple plans in place for exactly that to happen, because that's the wildest part of this whole thing, is that you're not wrong if you've been sensing those things. But where is that sense coming from, and how actually is this going to play out? Let's look at it. Let's start with, why do you have that sense right now? It's coming from two places, the past and the future. It's coming from the past because there is something within your cellular matrix. Your body remembers because you have cellular carryover in your ancestral line that remembers, just as all of nature does, just as the planetary consciousness does, that our planet every 12,000 years or so undergoes a mass, what we would call cataclysm. It undergoes a mass event where an age ends and a new one begins. This has happened so many times that the carryover sits inside of you and says, well, there could be a great flood, there could be a great fire, there could be some great volcanic eruption, a cataclysm that I can't even imagine, because all of nature understands that this is the time that we are on the brink of, and there's something familiar as we broach this era of our shift. But this is no ordinary shift of the ages. This is the grand shift of the ages. This isn't a simple restructuring. This is a dissolving. So you could think of it as a system reboot. No, think of it as a system dissolve. You could think of it as another collapse event. No, think of it as the collapse of all of the collapses. That's indeed what it is, the collapse of the false matrix. This is the time where Earth has decreed, where God has decreed, where all of creation is aligned to take Earth back into 5D, where it belongs, where it came from initially. For a very long period of time, Earth has been hosting a reality called the false matrix. That's the inversion that you and I were born to and were programmed by, and have been working very, very hard to transcend. Earth is in that process of ascending and transcending out of that reality. So this sense within us is because we're aligned to nature. No matter how disconnected we've become, no matter how conditioned we've become, there is something inside of us that reads the planetary signals and knows, despite what we see on the news, despite all of those external distractions, something inside of you has that carryover, recognizes this, and knows what's about to transpire. However, having said that, remember that this is no mini 12,000 year cycle. This is the culmination point of hundreds of thousands of years worth of time spent in the false matrix. It's kind of like this is where Earth comes to a 0 point as it returns back to her original kingdom, her original Eden-like experience. That's Earth's true nature. Equally, you are returning to your true nature. Now, because the Archons who held the false matrix in place, they knew what was coming. They knew that we would start sensing this. So they rubbed their hands together in glee and said, oh, this is the perfect time, because humanity expects it, because humanity anticipates it, because humanity cannot comprehend the possibility that's before them, which is the possibility to ascend with the planet, that instead of cataclysm and doom, that we shift into light. This great shift, many of them are characterized by elements such as wind and fire and rain, flood, for example, earth, mudslides, etc. This is different. This one is ether. This is us returning to who we are as energetic beings of truth and higher consciousness. That's what this shift is. But the Archons were banking on us not being able to tap into that level of consciousness, that level of light, but rather to draw on the dread. And that's where the sense of the future is coming in. There is that timeline that was, note this is in the past tense, that was sitting out in front of us, that looked like the complete worst case scenario, the complete destruction of all destructions. I'm not talking about a war here or a skirmish there or some disturbance, some unrest in some faraway country. I'm talking about the worst case scenario being something, whether it was a world war type scenario, whether it was a disease type scenario that we would deal with, something that would affect every single human being alive and bring them into a resonance of fear, bring them into a mistrust and a desperation for salvation that would have them marching to the beat of the Archons' drums and then recreating another false matrix reality. When it came time to the ending of this era, that would be according to the plans of the Archons, when humanity would perish. They wouldn't be able to attain the light that we potentially could, and they would ensnare the population of humanity back into another false matrix, which would have to be hosted on another planet. We would have to drop these earthly bodies and be reborn into the same frequency net that we were born to in this lifetime. So in other words, a continuation, just in a different place, but a continuation of the false matrix reality. That was the plan. And I share this with you so that you can see the bigger picture, because that's what we need to start understanding. As the bigger picture unfolds, however, this is where the plot twist unfolds also. Because the Lightworkers did what nobody imagined that we were capable of doing. We shifted the timeline. Instead of descending into a timeline of doom, we ascended into a timeline of ascension, of potentiality, and of self-realization, and of healing, and of miracles, and of love. We began to pave the pathway for a higher timeline. We did this through an inner collapse. Something in us knew, not at the linear logical level, something deep within us knew, because we were being guided by a higher signal that was our soul talking to us, that said, you've got to undergo these dark nights of the soul. You have to deconstruct from within so that you don't participate in the destruction from without. In other words, the external reality. There was something guiding you that said, let's deconstruct now, almost voluntarily. Not that we put up our hands and said, oh yes, I'd like to be a light working front runner who embraces all of the energies first and feels like they are having ascension symptoms up the wazoo, doesn't know what they're doing. We didn't put our hands up and do this at the linear logical level, but we did this at a very, very deep level of knowing. We volunteered for this role because we knew that we could, and we have. I love being underestimated. That's exactly what the Lightworkers were. This wasn't planned for. So the plot twist is that the worst case scenario is not going to take place. That's already changed, but that doesn't mean that there won't be turbulence. That doesn't mean that we won't see some great shakes in our timeline. Even though the darkest version of the timeline has been averted, there will still be residue. The energetic scaffolding of the false matrix, as it falls away, there may be tremors. And you may still see it and feel it in the systems around you. It's a softer version and a softer expression of what was on the cards for us and of what was intended. You may still feel it in your own relationships. You may even feel it more localized, as inside your own body. That turbulence, though, is no longer driving us towards destruction. It is the collapse of the old, not the collapse of you. What the timeline looks like right now is something gelatinous. The timeline itself, it looks like something gelatinous that's pulsing and reshaping itself on a daily basis. because it is. So how light can the light workers go? How much sanctity within the storm can we anchor ourselves into? How much can we recognize that we are indeed grid workers? Not that we have to go out, and I'm not encouraging you to say, well, I've got this new label, now I'm a grid worker and I'm healing the planet. That is not what a grid worker is. A grid worker is a being who has mastery over their own energetic grid. And that therefore ripples into the grid of the collective consciousness, which creates a landscape for more people to join the higher timeline that we are catalyzing and initiating right now. As we start to see, wow, we volunteered for this role, we are the grid, we are the higher alignment. This is not, therefore, about us demanding change, but being the change. Just today, I saw a message from somebody, I can't remember if it was Instagram, Facebook, it was somewhere, and this person said, oh, Kerry, you're so full of nonsense. You're always saying every 6 months something's going to change, or every day something's supposed to change, or we're on this higher timeline. Surely by now, this person said, I would see it. Surely by now there would be something that tells me, oh, beauty is upon us, miracles are happening, upliftment is taking place. And the answer is, you have to feel it inside of you first. And if you don't, how can you possibly see it on the outside? This is where we are in our timeline. It's a level of responsibility we've never had before. And by the way, you guys, we did this shift, we undertook this shift as light workers on our own. And I don't mean unsupported. I mean, a galactic force didn't come in and do this for us. They paved the landscape for us to do this. They did a lot of work outside there in the place beyond our atmosphere. They did a lot of support work there. They took down the trap of the reincarnation false light signal. They took down the broadcast signal of the false matrix. They have been working extremely hard, but this was always for us to do. To take down the matrix that remained within us, within our programming, within our functioning, within our biology, within our minds and our thoughts and our hearts. That's what we've been doing. Right now, every reality is congealed into two. Remember I said earlier, timeline is kind of gelatinous and it's pulsing and it's moving. It's got these two timelines busy crystallizing into two solid realities. This has always been the case. But it has existed as two potentials, meaning two energetic landscapes. Now those two energetic landscapes are crystallizing into two physicalized landscapes. The one that holds the higher timeline and one that holds a lower timeline. That lower timeline, it is most likely that it will not lead to another false matrix environment. It is most likely off the cards. I say most likely because nothing is carved in stone. Nothing is cemented. Remember, the reality is pulsing. You're beyond that place where somebody can predict for you and say, this is what's going to happen tomorrow and the next day and the next and the next. I can give you this energetic overview, which to me is the most empowering thing I can do, because it's allowing you to realize, wow, I'm in the process. I'm in the throes of creation itself right now. That means we all have way more impact, way more influence than we ever dared to imagine possible. But that false matrix scenario looks like it's off the table. Instead, what's on the table is a new 4D reality. Instead of another trap of a false matrix, that's a place of deep struggle, deep turmoil. It's another round of ascension. So it's called another ascension window. This would take place, new planet where you are born into a new body, new name, new face, new identity, no memory of where you were, who you were before, just like this life. It's how you were born to this life. You didn't remember the name you had before, the mother, the brother, the dog, etc. This is a amnesiac state. So we would, for those who are going into the so-called lower timeline populate a 4D Earth. That looks like the likeliest scenario now. And I know so many of you, you're so worried about your pets and your loved ones. You're so worried about your children. Here's the thing. That which is of nature and aligned to nature ascends without struggle. That which is our children, that which is our animals, these are the most aligned to nature. For them, ascension is just another breath. Ascension is not something they try for, struggle for, wish for, hope for, pray for. That's like being hysterical in case the next breath is not there, when obviously it's going to be there, and the next and the next. Ascension is just another breath for beings aligned to higher consciousness, which is to their nature. For those who've become immersed in density, which is going to take a lot of trauma, and it's going to take a lot of attachment to the trauma, a lot of addiction to the trauma, a lot of refusal to heal, those beings simply need more time to heal. And that's what that new earthscape is going. And I call it an earthscape because it's going to look exactly like we're familiar with on planet Earth, just a different planet who holds an agreement to host that 4D reality. The exciting thing that's taking place right now is there are no planets volunteering to take on the false matrix. That has to be in place in order for a false matrix to be established. And that's why I said it's highly unlikely that the false matrix would be able to repopulate elsewhere. That's because of the legacy of light that we have lit up here. As we dissolve from within ourselves, the legacy of the false matrix for ourselves and our ancestral line, as that occurs, we make it almost impossible for the false matrix to resurrect itself elsewhere. The higher timeline is the timeline where we humans move forward into 5D with this face, this name, this body, but a light-bodied form. All of your memories go with you. All of your past goes with you, but a complete restructuring from the cellular level. That means you are youthed back to your prime, your body is healed, your limbs regrown if they're missing. This is an entire new template. That 5D reality is the divine matrix, the opposite of the false matrix that we've lived in. It holds no remnants of pollution and no polluted monetary system and no enslavement. It is entirely sovereign and love-filled and light-filled. However, it is not given to you because you demand it. It is accessible because you allow it and you receive it. And that is why one of the most potent energies that you can be in right now is a receptivity of love. So on that note, let the love that is be with you. Let love breathe inside of you. Let yourself remember that love is your origin and it's your truth. And no matter how far away from love you may have felt or feel right now, it remains your origin. It's at the core of who you are. And that is what you're returning to. Yes, you will see two realities. Before the grand shift, which we call Ascension, happens, where that final split happens, you will see these two realities crystallizing right before your eyes. And it will depend entirely on your resonance, which reality you're aligning to. This isn't about a fight. Which reality is right, which reality is wrong. This is simply, where is your alignment? There are strands of the lightest, brightest, purest light from the divine matrix itself already crystallizing here into our timeline right now. So there will be people that say, I've never felt more love. And there will be people that say, I've never felt more hardship. This is not wrong and right, good and bad. This is alignment. And at any point, you can shift yours. It's really really, really difficult. I would go so far as to say impossible when you hold a higher alignment to drop all the way down into a negative agreement that forsakes that higher alignment. It would have to be a complete and utter rejection of your light, of your love, of goodness, in order to facilitate you moving away from the light that you've stepped into. But it's very easy when you're in density at this stage still. If you can be humble, if you can be open, if you can be receptive to the truth of who you are, not to the truth of who somebody else is, to the truth of who you are, you make this process so available, so accessible to you, the process of shifting into that higher timeline. All of nature is doing this with you. From my heart, all the way into yours. So much love. I hope you feel it. I hope you say yes. And I hope you let it in so that you can ripple that love all over that comment section. We were born for this, and it's unfolding now. Don't lose your footing right here at this most critical part.